Last season, the Miami Heat were the most surprising team. From them being the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference, when most had them placing as the 7th or 8th seed, or some people even predicting them not to make the playoffs. And then in the bubble, they somehow made the finals as a team built on one star and a bunch of perfect role players. On their way to the finals, they defeated the number 1 seed Bucks and the Celtics, who were a very good team. And even in the finals, most people had the Lakers winning in 4 or 5 games, but the Heat pushed it to 6 games without their starting point guard in Dragic. I believe the Heat are already being forgotten as one of the contenders for next season. And in today's video, I will be discussing how good I think the Heat will be next year and discussing their offseason moves. Please like this video to show support, subscribe to my channel to help me reach 500 subscribers before the end of 2020, and comment on this video to start a conversation with me. And play that intro. This year's offseason for Miami was very uneventful. Their biggest move was signing Bam Adebayo to a 5-year, $160 million extension. And although this is a lot of money, I think it's a good move for the Heat because they now will have Bam for the next 5 years and there is no chance he leaves. Bam is one of the best defenders in the NBA and he is good enough to transform your whole defense due to his versatility. He could legitimately switch on to any player in the league. He can also protect the rim at an elite level, and on offense he's a good post scorer and is an above average ball handler as a big man, and he's a top 3 passer at his position. Bam's jumper has also been extended to the mid-range, and I can see him even going further to the 3-point line as soon as next season. Bam is still young, so he can improve, and I see him being a top 15 player in his prime, and that next year I can see his scoring and his role going up. Miami also re-signed Goran Dragic to a 2-year, $37 million deal, and I think they overpaid for him a little bit because I question whether a 36-year-old Goran Dragic will deserve $18 million, but I feel it's a move they had to make because at times in the playoffs, he was the Heat's best player, and overall, he was their 3rd best player, so they couldn't afford to lose him. Dragic's a great shooter and a very good playmaker. He also brings great leadership to the Heat, and I believe he will come off the bench as a backup to Kendrick Nunn, and I think next season he will regress, but he will still be one of the best 6 men. The Heat did lose Jay Crowder, which would have been a big loss since he was crucial for them in the playoffs, but they signed Avery Bradley and Maurice Harkless instead, and I think those guys can give you what Crowder did because they both are really good defenders who are solid from the 3-point line. They also signed them to reasonable contracts and they can give Miami more depth. Miami also lost Derrick Jones Jr., but I don't think it's as big of a loss because he barely played in the postseason and he is such a terrible shooter that he sometimes is unplayable. Tyler Hero will be entering his 2nd season, and I can see him having a bigger role and maybe being a high teen scorer. I think Tyler next season will get more ball handling opportunities and will return as a better shooter. Duncan Robinson will still be a top 5 shooter in the league and will still be running around and spacing the floor. Duncan is older than most people think, with him being 26, so I don't see him improving much, maybe besides on defense. The Heat will still have Jimmy Butler, who proved in last year's playoffs that he's a top 10 player and capable of being a first option. Miami's bench is still very strong with them having Andre Iguodala off the bench, who is a very good defender, and they will also have Myers Leonard and Kelly Olynyk, who are 2 stretch bigs, which is always a positive thing. Although Kendrick Nunn wasn't a big factor to the Heat making the playoffs, he was really good for them in the regular season, and I expect him to get back into the rotation next year. The Heat basically have the same roster, but no one is talking about them as one of the contenders in the East, and I think it's because a lot of people view their finals run as a fluke, or with all these new teams making moves and the Heat remaining stagnant, Many people have forgotten about them, but I still think they're a contender and a team that you don't want to face. And I actually believe them and the Bucks are on the same level, because I don't think Drew is enough to put the Bucks firmly above the Heat. In a series, I would still go for the Bucks because they have the best player, but I wouldn't be surprised if Miami could upset them again. And I also think the Heat can defeat the Nets, but this is mostly due to the fact that we don't know how good KD will be when he returns. If he returns 100%, I think Brooklyn could be significantly better than the Heat, but I only see KD coming back at 80%, which is a Paul George level of player. And if that's the case, I think the Heat would be on the same level as the Nets. But in the series, I would go with the Heat because they have way better chemistry and defense. As for the Heat versus teams like Boston and Toronto, I think the Heat are slightly better than them, but I still can see either team winning. The Heat are primed to surprise everyone again, but I won't be shocked. Anyways guys, that's it for the video. Please like the video to show support, subscribe to help me reach my goal of 500 subscribers before the end of 2020, and comment on this video to start a conversation with me. Also check this video up above if you like this one, and I'm out.